I want to tell you something that nobody told me. You are not stuck. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are asleep. And the terrifying thing is, sleep feels exactly like being awake when you are inside it. I know because I slept for 50 years. 50 years of going through every correct motion, hitting every expected milestone, becoming everything the world said I should become. And I was completely, utterly unconscious the entire time. I am 88 years old. My hands shake when I pour my morning tea. I cannot walk to the end of my garden without resting. And I have never been more awake than I am right now, sitting in this chair talking to you. That is either going to make you curious or it is going to make you click away. If you are still here, good, because what I'm about to tell you is not inspiration. It is not motivation. It is a map that took me 8 decades to draw. And I am giving it to you now so you do not waste the years I wasted drawing it. I was born into a family that understood work, not joy, not wonder. Work. My grandfather had come from nothing, genuinely nothing, the kind of nothing that leaves marks in a family for generations. And he had built a modest, solid life through sheer grinding labor. And that labor became the family religion. You worked, you produced, you justified your existence through output. Anything else was indulgence. So I worked. From the time I was conscious of being a person, I worked. I studied hard. I took the serious path at every fork. At 23, I entered a profession my father approved of. At 28, I married sensibly. At 34, I had the house and the position and the correct number of children, and I stood on the outside of my own life, and it looked exactly right. And inside, something was making a very quiet sound that I had gotten very good at not hearing. Not grief, not depression. Something more like the sound a machine makes when it is running, but not actually connected to anything. A spinning that produces no output, motion that goes nowhere. I ignored it for decades. I had built a very good life and I was going to live it. It was not until I was 71, sitting on a bench in a park in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, watching a young woman sketch something in a notebook with total absorption, completely lost in what she was doing, that the sound became impossible to ignore. She was not producing anything the world would measure. She was not optimizing or achieving or demonstrating value. She was just there, fully there, lit from the inside by the simple act of making something for no reason except that it mattered to her. I sat on that bench and cried for the first time in 40 years. Not because I was sad exactly, because I recognized what I was seeing, and I could not remember the last time I had felt it. I do not tell you this because I have answers I found in a book. I tell you this because I am 88, and from here I can see the whole shape of a life, the way you can see the whole shape of a coastline only from the air. Every bay and headland that was invisible when I was walking on the ground. I can see exactly where I left the road. I can see exactly when I stopped being awake, and I am going to show you those places. Not so you can feel sorry for me, so you can see them coming in your own life and choose differently, because you still have time to choose. The first truth, you are not living your life, you are performing it. There is a version of existence that looks like living but is actually theater. You have a role. The role has lines. There is an audience, parents, colleagues, the formless mass of people you imagine watching your choices, and the role requires that you perform competence and certainty and progress at all times. The show must go on. The audience must be satisfied. I performed for 50 years without once asking who had written the script. I had a friend in my 40s named Raymond. Raymond was constitutionally incapable of performance. He was a botanist and a genuinely strange man who cared about moss in a way that made most people slightly uncomfortable. He would stop mid-sentence to look at something growing on a wall. He earned a modest salary. He drove an embarrassing car. His house was full of plants and books and very little else. At social gatherings, Raymond made people uneasy. He didn't perform status or ambition. He just talked about what he actually found interesting, which was almost always something most people did not find interesting at all. I spent years feeling slightly superior to Raymond, and then I got old enough to be honest with myself. Raymond was the only person in my professional circle who was genuinely, visibly, consistently alive. Not because botany is the secret to human flourishing, but because he had never agreed to perform a life he hadn't chosen. He was doing the actual thing, and the actual thing was lighting him up from the inside, and no amount of social awkwardness or modest income or embarrassing car changed that fundamental fact. Raymond died at 78, still talking about moss, still lit up. I don't know what your version of moss is. I don't know what the thing is that makes you lose track of time and stops the performance and lets you just be a person actually inside their own life. But I know you have one, and I know the performance is probably drowning it out. Find the moss. I am serious. Whatever version of it exists for you, find it and protect it like it is the most important thing you own, because it is. The second truth. The map the world gave you was drawn by people who never visited the territory. Somewhere around the age of 7, every one of us receives a map. The map tells us what success looks like, what the destination is, what the correct route is, what the approved stops along the way are, and in what order they should be visited. I followed that map exactly, faithfully, without significant deviation for the better part of 5 decades. And here is what I discovered at the end of it. The map was not wrong exactly. The destinations existed. I visited them. But nobody had written anything on the map about what it actually felt like to be there. Nobody had noted that certain destinations that looked large and important on the map were, in practice, quite small. That other things that weren't on the map at all turned out to be the places where something real happened. I had a mentor early in my career, formidable man. He had followed the map with great success, and he communicated clearly but without cruelty that the map was simply what you did. This is the route. Stay on it. The territory is exactly what the map says it is. I believed him because he was successful, and I was young, and those two things combined made his certainty seem like wisdom. It was not wisdom, it was just certainty. And certainty about a map is not the same as knowledge of the territory. The map will tell you what to want. It will tell you what to build your days around and what to sacrifice and what to pursue and what to measure yourself against. Here is what I wish someone had told me at 25. You are allowed to put the map down and look around. You are allowed to notice that the territory is different from what was drawn. You are allowed to mark new things on the map, things that matter to you, that the original cartographers never thought to include because they never went looking for them. The map is a starting point. It is not a sentence. Fold it up occasionally. Look at the actual ground under your feet. The third truth, urgency is a drug, and you are addicted. Here's something the modern world does not want you to understand. Almost nothing that feels urgent actually is. I spent the majority of my working life in a state of low-grade emergency. There was always a deadline, a crisis, a thing that needed to happen before some other thing could happen. The urgency was real in the sense that it was genuinely felt, but almost none of it, almost none, had any lasting weight whatsoever. I lost sleep over presentations that nobody remembers. I skipped evenings with my children for projects that have left no trace. I cut short conversations that mattered for meetings that did not, because the meetings had a fixed time on the calendar and the conversations did not. Urgency always beats importance in the short term. It is louder, it has deadlines, it carries consequences you can point to immediately. Importance is quiet, important things, the relationships, the presence, the attention you give to the actual texture of being alive. They do not send calendar reminders. They do not create immediate visible consequences when you neglect them. The consequence arrives years later quietly in the shape of a life that somehow feels thinner than it should. I had a daughter who used to wait up for me when she was small. She would sit at the top of the stairs when I worked late and wait. When I came in, she would want to tell me something, some small specific thing that had happened in her day that felt to her like it deserved to be told. I was almost always too tired, too full of the urgency of whatever had just consumed the previous 12 hours. I would listen with half my attention and tell her it was late and she should sleep. She stopped waiting at the stairs sometime around age 10. I did not notice for months. That is what urgency costs. It costs you the moments that do not announce themselves as important, the ones that only reveal their weight when they are gone, and you are old enough to finally feel it. Slow down deliberately and regularly, not as a productivity technique, as an act of resistance against a world that profits from your constant emergency. The important things are there. They are just quiet. You have to choose to hear them. The fourth truth. The person you are afraid to be is probably the person you actually are. This one is the hardest one to say. Somewhere under the performance, under the role, under the map, and the urgency and the accumulated weight of everyone else's expectations, there is a person, a specific, strange, unrepeatable person with particular tastes and particular fears and things that matter to them that might not make immediate sense to anyone else. I suppressed that person for most of my life, not dramatically, just steadily and consistently. The way you press something flat under a heavy object, over time it just becomes that shape and forgets it was ever anything else. I wanted to write, not professionally, not ambitiously. I wanted to write the way Raymond wanted to look at moss, simply because something in me moved toward it and was more alive when it was doing it. I did not write. For 50 years, I did not write. Because the person I was performing did not write. Because writers were impractical and I was practical. Because there was no room in the map for it. I started at 74, 3 years after the bench, after the woman with the notebook, after I finally got quiet enough to hear the sound I had been avoiding. It was too late for it to become anything the world would measure. It was not too late for it to matter. I wish I had 50 years of it. I have 14, and every one of those 14 years has contained more of whatever I would call being genuinely alive than the 50 that came before them. That is not a small thing, but it is not what I wanted to tell you. What I wanted to tell you is this: the person you are hiding, the one with the strange interest or the unfashionable desire or the thing they want that does not fit the map. That person is not a risk. That person is the point. You are not performing towards something real. You are performing away from something real. Stop, turn around, go toward it. I am 88. My tea is cold and I should probably rest. But before I go, I want to say one more thing. I do not regret my life. I want to be careful about that because I have spent this whole conversation pointing at what I missed, and I do not want you to hear it as the sound of a man who wishes he had never lived. That is not what this is. I had things, real things, children who are extraordinary humans, a marriage that was imperfect and genuine and lasted, work that occasionally produced something worth producing, moments of actual grace that arrived uninvited and stayed long enough to mean something. What I regret is the sleep, the decades of moving through a life without being present inside it, the urgency that replaced attention, the performance that replaced truth, the map that I followed so faithfully that I forgot to notice the territory. You are awake right now. In this moment, reading this, you are awake. The question is what you do with that. You can go back to the performance. The world will accommodate you. It is designed for that. The urgency will resume. The map will assert itself, and the quiet sound of the thing underneath will get a little more buried every year. Or you can put one thing down today, one performance, one urgency that is actually not urgent, one stretch of time given back to something that matters quietly rather than loudly, and then do it again tomorrow. That is how you wake up, not in a single moment, in 1,000 small decisions to be where you actually are, instead of where the script says you should be. The controller was always in your hand. The only question is what you decide to do with it now. If something in here landed somewhere real, leave it in the comments, not the polished version, the actual thing you are thinking. And if you want to keep having the kind of conversation that does not waste your time, stay close. I am 88 and I am still waking up. You can too.